Alright, welcome back. In this video, we're going to start with the model building. Previously we started with the visualization, then we started with the EDA, then we move on to the visualization part. Now we're going to start with the model building. Okay, so having said that, let me actually push this one up, right? So I'm going to push this part up and then take this one off. So let's see what we wrote dealing with the visualization part. So over here I'm going to write dealing with the model building, part. Okay, so that is going to work for us over here. Now I'll comment this and then push the rest down. All right, and I'll push the rest down, so just like we did over here, right? So now we're going to deal with this one, the model building part. Okay, so let's see what we can do over here. Okay, so just like we did earlier on, so over here, if the option is equal to model, right? So if the option is equal to visualization, we do this, right? And then we set some subheader over there, then we load our data. So maybe, it's just the same thing. It's just the same thing that we did over here, right? EDA, we set the subtitle, and then we loaded the data, right? So I'm going to do the same thing, right? So I'm going to do the same thing. Let me just even copy this one instead of me typing it over and over again. Let me copy this and then put it there, right? So this title is such subtitle is going to be, say, model building, right? Something like that. So we can write that, and then we load the data, right? We load the data. So everything here is the same thing. We don't need to change anything. Whatever we need to do is to start from this checkbox and then moving on, right? We need to start from there and then move on with it. Okay. So now what we're going to do is to, for the model building, we need to have our data, maybe the X data and then the Y data, right? If you see what we normally do in the Jupyter Notebook, right? What we normally do is to actually select some data for X, some data for Y, and then we split our data, right? So and before we start building the model, so we're going to do the same thing, right? We're going to do the same thing over here. So in that case, let's give them the opportunity to be selecting the various columns that they want to. If, for instance, if we think about the first file that we loaded, right? The first file we loaded was huge, right? It was huge. It was having around 2,800 and something, right? So records with 31 different rows. Different columns, right? That's quite huge. So we can give them the flexibility to actually select some of the columns that they want to work with, right? So let's do that. So I'm going to do if then I do my select box, right? I do my select box. Then inside here, what I'm going to write is maybe select. So all these are something that you can just do, right? Just do it as per your own requirements. So select multiple columns, right? So I do that, bring my column there. What I'm going to do is that, so if they select it, it's actually going to be a new data that we want. So I'm just creating this new variable called new data, and then I use the multi-select, right? I give them the multi-select, which is going to help me to be able to accept these multiple columns. So select your preferred columns. Okay, there's one good thing about this IDE, Sublime Text, which auto-completes everything for you, right? You keep tracks of whatever it is you're typing, and then give you the flexibility to actually complete it without you typing it over and over again. Okay, so in this case, whatever I'm going to pass in is df.columns, right? That's it. This one I'm going to type in. Then after that, remember that I told you if they select say model, right? If they select model, it means that these two, right, the visualization part and then the EDA part is deactivated, and only this part is working, right? So we need to do this thing again over here, right? So supposed to do it this way. Then whatever new data that they've selected, right, is going to be in that, right? Whatever new data that they've selected. Then after that, I can now convert this to a data frame. So st.data frame. Then inside that, I pass in my df1 pass in my df1. So if I do that, I'm done. Now what I'm going to do over here is let me bring a comment here, is to create this. Let me show you in the Jupyter Notebook. There's a part that I need to create, right? The x and then the y, right? The data. That's what I need to create, right? So that's what I'm going to do now, right? So maybe creating my dependent and independent, or maybe or dividing some. I think that makes sense, right? So dividing my data into x and y variables. Okay, so basically I'm going to just leave it like that. Now what I'm going to do is that normally the target column is at the last, right, at the last part. So if mostly you'll find it at the last part. For instance, if you take this data set, right, this is let me see the data set that we're dealing with. Let's go all the way up and then see the data set that we loaded. Okay, so this is the breast cancer data set. Let's go and load that data set over here. All right, let's go and load it over here. So let me save it. Let me actually do Control S over here, or Command S, then come here, and then you see that everything is working fine, right? So let me change this data set and then use the same breast cancer data set, and then let's see. Okay, there's breast cancer data set. I actually wanted to select maybe this credit card, right? Okay, so this is what I wanted to select, right? So normally you can see that the target is at the last part, right? The target is at the last part. So that's, in order for me to be able to divide this data set, this is what I'm going to do over here, right? Or this is what I'm going to do over here. Now I'm going to say that my x, right, my x is equal to my df1. That is if I give them the option to select these columns, right? So it's actually going to be my df1, right? My df1 dot I'm going to use the ilog function. I'm sure you're familiar with this ilog function if you've gone through the numpy class and the pandas class. I mean, the previous classes that we've been taking so far, I mean, we've talked about this iLocation, right, where you use the index location, right, in this case. So that's what I'm using over here, right? And inside that, I want to select all the rows, right, whatever the people have selected, whatever columns that they have selected, right, or the records that they have selected. I want all the rows in that. And then for the columns, I want it from the first column, which is index 0, all the way to the last but 1, right? The last but 1, which means that I'm just taking everything with the exception of the last one, right? Remember that if you want to use the 0 indexing, then the class column is going to be start. I mean, if you want to use the negative indexing, it's going to be -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7, all the way to the last one, right? So with the exception of the -1, that's what I'm doing over here, right? So with the exception of this one, that's going to be my x. Then for my y, right, for my y is going to be only that part, right? It's going to be only that part, so only the last one. So df1 dot let me use the iLocation, right? Let me use the iLoc over here. Then I will select all the rows, right? And then I'll select only the last part, which is only the last column, right? That's what I'm going to do over here, right? There's a comma here, right? So select all the rows, then I select only the last column, right? That's going to be my S. Okay, now what I'm going to do apart from that, right, what I'm going to do over here is let me actually bring this one here. Okay, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to set a seed, right? I'm going to use this seed later on, so I'll show you what I'm using that for, right? I'm going to set the seed. Let me actually give a space over here, right? So I'm going to use this seed later on, and I'll show you what I am going to use this for. I'm going to put this at the sidebar, right? So I'm using st.sidebar, and then I'm going to put this in the form of a slider, right? I'm going to use a slider for this purpose, right? And inside the slider, I'm going to write this so that they will know that this is the seed. Okay, this is the seed. And then what I'm going to do is that the seed, this slider should start from 1 to say, let me give it 1 to say 200, right? So the seed could go all the way to 200, right? So I'll show you what this seed means, right? I'll show you in the couple of minutes. All right. So at the same sidebar, what I want to do, right? So let me actually do Control S over here, and then go and see the changes that I'm doing so far. All right. Okay. Here I have to select columns. If you've not selected any columns, then you're going to see that error over there, right? So don't worry about that error, right? Don't worry about that error. Okay. So now you see that everything will be fine, right? I mean, it's just running. So let's go and then finish with what we are doing over here. So at the same sidebar, what I'm going to add is the various classifiers. So I'm going to create this classifier. So I'm going to create this classifier name, right? So maybe classifier underscore name, right? That's what I'm going to do over here. Then I'll do st dots. I'm putting it at the sidebar, right? St dots, right? St dots. Then I put this thing at the sidebar. Then I'm going to use the select box over here. Right? This is where I use the select box, right? So inside this select box, what I'm going to do is to give them the various classifiers. So select, maybe select your preferred classifier, maybe something like that. Classifier, right? So maybe select your preferred classifier. Then I'm going to give this in the form of a tuple here, right? So a lot of them is going to be there. Maybe we can consider KNN, right? So we can consider KNN. We can consider, say, support vector machine, right? We can also add maybe logistic regression, right? So we can add logistic regression, right? We can add that. We can add maybe Bayes theorem, right? Or maybe, yeah, let me do it naive Bayes. We can add naive Bayes. We can add say decision tree, right? Okay, we can add decision tree over there too. Now we can add, as many classifiers as we want, right? We can add as many classifiers as we want. So just feel free to add as many as you want. All right. Now let me go down here, right? After that is done, let me go down here. What I'm going to do after I've added these classifiers to the sidebar, I'm going to define a function. Let me do Control S and then see. I don't want to pages. Let me do Control S and see if everything is working and there's no error. Now you can see that our seed is there, right? Our seed is there and it's still running. So after that, the classifiers will also be there, right? After it's done running. Now you can see we have the various classifiers also there. Right? You have KNN, SVM, logistic regression, naive Bayes, and decision tree, right? So all these are what we added, right? These are the things that we added. Now that is done. So after that, what I'm going to do is to actually define some function over here, right? Which is going to help me add these hyperparameters, right? So remember that if you take, for instance, let's go to the Jupyter Notebook, right? For instance, if you want to build, say, k nearest neighbor algorithm, right? We have some hyperparameters that you can add. That is the number of n neighbors, that's the k, right? The number of neighbors that you want, the weight. There are several other parameters that you can add, right? If you want to build, say, support vector machine, there are some parameters, right? We have gamma, we have c, we have some others that you can add, right? If you can see over here, we have degree, we have class weight, we have decision function shape. We have a lot of them, probability, a lot of them that you can add, right? So I'm just going to keep this one simple. So over here, what I'm going to do is to create this function, right, which is going to help me add parameters over here. So I'm going to create this function called add parameter, right? And then inside that, what I'm going to do is to add, name, maybe name. Let me go here, right? So name of classifier, right? So let me just shorten this to say CLF, right? So name of classifier. So I created that and then I just initialize this one, right? Let me just initialize this. that tuple, then I'm using if so if the name, right, so that's whatever name that they're giving me, right? If the name of the classifier is equivalent to, so if someone selects say KNN, right, and in KNN you need to choose I mean the K, right? In KNN you need to choose the K in, or maybe some other parameters that you can choose, or in support vector machine, for instance, you need to choose the C, right? So if someone selects SVM, right, if someone selects SVM, right, and then I should have a flexibility for them to be choosing maybe say their C, right? So I can do maybe C equals, then over here I can do ht dot sidebar, right? So the C is going to be a slider on the sidebar, right? So that's what I'm going to do, right? So it's going to be a slider. It's going to be a slider on the sidebar, right? So for that, let me actually do this, and then put in the C, and I want it to start from, say, maybe is the C should start from maybe 0.01 all the way to maybe 15, right? Something like that. Okay, something like that. And then now my param over here, right? Now my param over here will be the C, right? My param over here will be the C, right? My param C is actually going to be this C that I've just created, right? It's going to be this C that I've just created. Okay, so that's what is going to happen. So in this case I'm doing it for support vector machine, and then for KNN, right? So you can add as many hyperparameters that you want. So for instance, the logistic regression, naive Bayes, and decision tree, they all have their own hyperparameters you can also add, right? So I'm just showing you an example that that is possible. So you can also do that, right? You can add as you want. So if the name of the classifier is actually equivalent to say KNN, right? If it is equivalent to say KNN, then in this case I'll set K, right? So I'm going to set K, and I'm going to put it at the sidebar. So I'm doing st.sidebar, right? st.sidebar, and it's actually going to be in the form of a slider, right? It's actually going to be in the form of a slider, right? So in that case, what I'm going to do is this K, right? And I want it to start from say 1 to 15 is fine. Okay, 1 to 15 is fine. Then what's now my param is going to be, right? My param K, right? So in this case my param K is going to be equivalent to this this K that I've just created. Okay, so that is basically it, and then I'll return this param. Okay, I'll return this param, and then I'm done. So down here I have to, after I create the function, I have to call the function. Okay, so over here what I'm doing is I'm calling the function, right? So that's what I'm doing over here. Okay, so over here I'm going to do params equals then the function name, which is add parameter. Then inside that, right, I'm going to pass the classifier name, right? So whatever classifier name that I'll get, right, if I get the classifier name, then this function is going to work, right? It's going to be called and it's going to perform, right? So if I pick say KNN, right, if I pick KNN, then it's going to activate this function and it's going to work on the KNN. Okay, it's going to give me this function. It's going to give me this part of the function. If I pick say SVM, right, if I pick SVM, then this part of the code is actually going to run. This part of the function is going to run. Okay, so that's basically what we've just created over here. Okay. Now, after that is done, after we've done with the parameters, right? Let me just do Control S, right, or Command S, and then see if everything is working fine, right? If we don't have any errors in there. Okay, so everything is fine. We don't have any errors in there. All right, it's actually running. So let's see. Okay, so now you see that for K we have our K where we can actually be selecting different keys, and it's actually starting from 1 to 15. That's what we did, right? From 1 to 15, right? If you select say SVM is also going to give you if we select say SVM, right, it's actually going to give you C instead of K, right? So you see that it's running, right? So after it's done running, you will see C here instead of K. Okay, so now you can see that for support vector machines that we have our C here. So you can change the C as you want, right? So we can give them that kind of flexibility to be changing their C. Okay, so that is done. That is done. What we are going to do now after this, let me actually go a little bit down, right? So this part is done. We've been able to add those hyperparameters, right? So we're going to define another function which will actually create these which will actually take care of these classifiers for us. Okay, so what I'm going to do, right, is I'm going to define another function just like I did over here, right? So let me actually do this, right, and then go a little bit down. So let me comment it over here. Define a function for our classifier. Right, so that's basically what I'm going to do over here. So for that, I'm going to do df get underscore classifier. So this is just a name that I'm giving, right? So you can give any name that you want. So in this case, this is going to be name of the classifier and also the params that I've created, right? So that's going to be the argument in the various classifiers that we're going to create. Okay, that's going to be the argument that we have. So remember that when we over here, let me show you, right? When we call any of the algorithms, right? When we call any of the algorithms, what we do is to initialize it, right? We initialize it. So in this case, you remember that you see that we are initializing it in to a variable called SVC, right? To a variable called SVC. Then we pass in the various arguments, right? So this is what our function is going to contain, right? It's going to contain the name of the classifier and then the parameter over there. And then after that, we actually going to initialize it. Okay, so in this case, let me initialize this to a variable called CLF, right? So just a variable name. You can name it maybe model or any variable name that you want, right? So initially let me initialize it to say none, right? And then as we progress, we will be adding something into it. So after that, so if the name, right, if the name of the classifier, right, if the name of the classifier is let's say it's a support vector machine, right? If it's the name of the classifier is support vector machine is caps, right? So SVM, right, is that. If it's that, then what we're going to do is to initialize it. So now you see that, so we are initializing it to say SVC, which is support vector classifier, right, which is support vector classifier. So inside that we have what is called the C, and we can initialize the C to the C that we've put on the sidebar, right, which is the hyperparameter that we've given them the flexibility to choose, right? So that is what is going to happen over here. So we are going to initialize it to that, right? So I'm going to copy the same thing over here. So whatever they choose is whatever we're going to use. Okay, so that's it, and then that part is done. So what if let me do it like this way. So elif, that is else if they don't select SVM, right, and then they select say KNN, right? If they select say KNN, then we initialize our classifier. We initialize our classifier to be equal to, that's going to be K, right? K neighbors classifier, right? Then inside the K neighbors classifier, we have what is called N neighbors, right? So N neighbors is actually going to be our param. So in this case, it's not param C, it's going to be param K, right? So it's just the same thing. This is what I'm copying and bringing it here, right? So whatever K that they will choose is whatever K that we're going to use. Okay. Okay, so that part is done. So they can also select else if name of classifier, right? So else if name of classifier is equivalent to, remember that we have several classifiers that we allow them to do, SVM, KNN, logistic regression, naive Bayes decision tree. So maybe if they don't select say SVM or KNN, they can select say logistic regression or just LR, right? If they selected that. Remember this one, we did not give any hyperparameters, so we can just go ahead. But as you're practicing alone, you can give them that kind of flexibility to do that. Okay, so we're going to use the logistic regression function over here, right? I'm not going to put any parameters in there, right? And maybe they can also select. They can also select, say, naive base. So if the name of classifier, right? If the name of classifier is equal to, say, naive base, right? If it's equal to naive base, then we initialize it to this, which is going to be, remember that in this case we're going to use the Gaussian NB, right? You're going to use, and if you're not familiar with naive Bayes, I mean, we have a whole tutorial on naive Bayes on your dashboard, so you can easily refer to that, right? You can easily refer to that. Okay, so inside that, I'm not going to put any hyperparameters in there, right? I'm not going to put any hyperparameters. So if it's not any of these, right? If it's not any of these, maybe it could be name of classifier could be equal to we have KNN support vector machine naive Bayes. What is left? Decision tree, right? So the person can also select, say, decision tree. Let me just go and copy the same thing that I wrote over there. So if it is equal to decision tree, okay, if it is equal to decision tree, then undo. Then we are going to initialize the CLF to be equal to decision tree classifier. Okay, that's it. We're done. I'm not giving hyperparameters in here, so you can do that as possible. If they don't select anything, we can actually maybe give them some warnings. Right? We can give them some warnings. So I'm sure by now you know how to write warnings in here, right? So maybe the warning message should be maybe select maybe your choice of algorithm, maybe something like that. Algorithm, right? So maybe I should just do algo, or let me just complete it. All right, so maybe we can give them that kind of warning if they don't select anything. So what we're going to return is going to be we need to return our CLF that we've just created. Okay, so that's it, and then we are done for this part. So remember that I told you if you define your function, you need to call it, or you need to call it just like we did over here. So we're going to do the same thing over here, right? We're going to call our function, right? So that's going to be CLF, and then if we do get classifier, right? Let me actually do this. CLF dot get underscore classifier, right? So if we do that, right, then we can pass in the classifier name. So depending on the classifier name that the person will choose, right? So the classifier name, and then also the params, right? We also pass in the params. So yeah, that is done. We've called the function, and that part is perfectly done. Okay, so now the next thing that we need to do is to just do the same thing that we used to do over here, right? So let me do it this way. So you see that we split our data into training and testing, right? So we are going to do the same thing, right? We're going to do the same thing. So we're going to need a string, right? So I'm going to write a string, s underscore train, right, comma, and then we also need s underscore test, right? S underscore test. And then we're also going to need y underscore train, right? Then we also need y underscore test, right? We're also going to need that. And then I'm going to use this train test split function to actually split my data. So I have my x, then I have my y, right? So that's what I have, right? So the test size, I'm going to use 80% for training and then 20% for testing, right? So all these are just hyperparameters, and they're all within your hands. You can use maybe 70-30 or maybe 75-25, something like that to do it. So test size, right? I'm going to set my test size to say 0.2, just 20% for testing, right? And then the rest will be for training. And then I'm going to set a random state, because this thing is going to be done randomly, right? So in order for me to get the same random values over and over anytime I run this code, I'm going to set this to say seed. Now this is when the seed will actually come into play. Remember that earlier on I created something called seed, and I told you that I'll tell you what I'm going to use it for. Okay, so seed here is going to also be in their own capacity to choose whatever seed that they want, right? So Seed is just I mean, you don't need to set seed to a specific number. It's just to help you be able to generate the same random values over and over again as you run your code, right? So they can set seed to any number they want, right? So I've given them that flexibility by putting it at the sidebar for them, so anything that we're doing here, you can put them at the sidebar so that they have the flexibility to choose whatever they want to choose and play with the data as they want and get to know their data better. Okay, so after you've split your data, what else do? You fit it, right? You fit it. So let me run this and see if so far we don't have any error in there, right? So let's go and see if there are any errors in there. I mean, it's running, so let's see. I mean, if there's error there, it won't even run. The error will just pop up like that, right? So let me see. Name get classifier is not defined. Okay, I think we made a mistake here. Get classifier and this. So this is the same thing I wanted to, right? So let me just, okay, but it's the same thing. Okay, so let's see, get classifier is not defined. Let me see what this is. Okay, so this one is outside the function. It's supposed to be inside the function. You see where the line is, right? It's supposed to be inside the function. Okay, so let's push this one and then do Control S and then come back and see. Just running, let's see if this error will get away, right? So now you see everything's working fine, right? So I mean, we define a function here, so everything's supposed to be within the function, okay? Everything's supposed to be in there. Now you can see that we can load it. Everything's working fine. Everything's working fine. So let's proceed and then build our algorithm before we come back and then play with it. All right, so we split this. So the next thing that we can do is to actually to fit our data, right? So remember that we've initialized everything to a variable called CLF, right? So just like we normally do in a Jupyter Notebook, right? So if we initialize our algorithm to say a variable called say KNN, we use KNN to fit our data, right? We use KNN to fit our data. So the same thing that we're going to do over here, we've initialized everything to say CLF. We're going to use CLF to actually fit our data. So CLF dot fit, right? Dot fit. And then what we're going to fit on is the X train and then the Y train, right? So X, we have X underscore train, right? So X train, comma, then we have Y underscore train, right? So that's it. That's what we need to do. After that is done, we can actually make some predictions, right? We can even make some predictions over here. So if I fit, I can use, maybe I should store this prediction values in a new variable called ypred, right? I'm going to use this ypred later on, right? So if I do that and then I use CLF, right? Since my CLF has now learned from my training data, I can use it to make predictions. So CLF.predict, right? I'm going to use that CLF.predict. Then I'm going to make this prediction on the X test data, right? So it's going to be X underscore test, and maybe I can just print the predictions, right? So st dot write, right? Then inside there, I can just show these predictions, right? So maybe I should just write this predictions. Okay, I can do predictions. Then I'll pass in my y underscore pred. That's it. Okay, that is done. So after that part is done, let me do save, Control S, and then I'll command S, then come and see if everything is fine. There's no error. So here it will tell you to select some multiple columns. So if I do that, it's going to give me option to select some columns, right? Okay, so before we selected those columns and play with it, so let's continue with what we're doing, and then after that we can actually go back there and then do whatever we want to do. Okay, so let's check after we've made some predictions. So let's check the accuracy. So I'm going to create a variable called accuracy. Then inside that, I'm going to use the accuracy score. Right, remember that earlier on I imported this this library which is called accuracy score. So I'm going to use that, right? So to check the accuracy. Okay. So inside the accuracy score, I'm going to use my y test, right? So I'm going to use my y test variable, and I'm going to use my y predict variable right inside there to make the accuracy. So I can now print out this accuracy, right? I can actually print out the name of the classifier and then the accuracy, right? So st.write, and then I'll do name of classifier, right? I'll do name of classifier, and then I'll pass in the name of the classifier, right? I'll pass in name of classifier. Then I also do st.write, right? And then inside there, I'll print the accuracy. This is supposed to be in this, right? I'll print the accuracy over here, right? So I'll pass in my accuracy. Okay, I'll pass in my accuracy over here. So this is done. So the main thing that we need to do here is actually done. The main thing that we need to do under this model is done. So let's just walk through one more time. So first we actually we've started with the EDA. We dealt with the EDA part. Then we went to the visualization. We dealt with that part. So under the model part, what we did is we already have this ELIF because we are coming from here. So it's either the EDA, right? If we EDA, we perform the EDA part. Else, if it is visualization, if the user selects visualization, then we work with the visualization. Else, if the person selects the model, then we work with the model. So under the model, we set subheading over there. Then we also give them the flexibility to load their own data set, right? So then we display the first 50 rows of that, right? So when they load the data set, we use the pd.read_csv to load, to read the data, and in the form of a CSV format, because what we're using over here is just file uploader, which will help them to upload any file at all, right? And then when they upload it, we use the pd.read_csv to read the data and then convert everything to a data frame, right? And then we store it in a variable called df. Okay, then after that, we give them the flexibility to choose some columns that they prefer to work on, right? If they want to work on the whole data set, they can go on and do that. If they want to select some columns to work on it, they can also do that. Okay. So we use we printed this out, select multiple columns, and then we use the multi-select to help them select different columns, right, from the data sets, right? Then we convert everything to a data frame and then display it to them. Okay, then over here we divided our data into X and then Y, right? Just like we normally do when you're dealing with the Jupyter Notebook, right? Just like we normally do, we divide our data into X and then Y, right? Just like you're seeing over here, right? Divide our data into X and Y. Okay, so this the same thing that we're doing over here. So normally what we are saying is that the first with exception of the last column, right, everything is supposed to be our X, right, and then only the last column is supposed to be our Y, right? So maybe over here, select your preferred columns. Maybe we should give them some notes here, right? So maybe NB. Let maybe something like that. Let your target variable be the last column to be selected. Right, so that we actually what we are doing over here will actually work, right? So we give them that kind of information over there, right? So that whatever they select auto work with us, right? So because we want the last column to be the target, right? So some data can also come where the target is actually the first one or is somewhere in the middle, right? So if they want to select the columns that they want to work with, then we are asking them to make sure that these the target column should be the last one, because that's the separation that we're doing here, right? The target column, the last one, is actually going to be stored in a variable called y, which is going to be in our target that we're going to predict. So if the target column is not at the last column, right, then this thing is not going to work. Otherwise, we could have added a lot of if functions over here, right, to make that work. All right. So that is what we did over here, and then we set a seed, right? We set a seed over here as a form of a slider, right, where we use the seed over here, right, because we're going to separate this data in the form of a random, right? It's going to be done randomly, so we want the same data points to be generated over and over again as we run our data set. Okay, so that's what we did. That's what we did over here. And then after that, we give them this option to select from many classifiers, right, in the form of a KNN, SVM, logistic regression, naive-based decision tree, right. We put all these at the sidebar, right. So that's basically what you can see over here, right. That's basically what you can see over here. We give them that kind of option, right. So you can see that we have, if we select K, we have KNN, we have K over here to select. Okay. So basically that is what we did. So this part is the part of our hyperparameter that we're giving them. So if the name of the classifier, right, if the name of the classifier is called SVM, for SVM you have a hyperparameter called C that you can actually tune, right, which is the penalty if there's any crossover, right. So support vector machine actually try to do a linear separation of data points. So we have a way that, I mean, if the data points are not linearly separable, but you can separate them linearly, but they should be, I mean, there will be some kind of a crossover. So we add some penalty to it, right. We add some kind of a penalty to it, and in this case the penalty is measured using the hyperparameter called C. So we're giving them that kind of flexibility to be able to use choose the C, different C, and then test which C is actually working better for them. And then for KNN2 we have a way that you can choose your K, right, because the neighbors that you choose determine how you're going to associate your new points, right, how you're going to classify the new point. Okay, so that is also something that you need to know. Okay, so we need to give them that kind of flexibility to be choosing different Ks and see which K is helping them to do better classification. Okay, so that's what we actually did over here. Then after that is done, we call our function over here. And then we created another function called get classifier, which is going to actually going to take care of the various classifiers that we want, right? Which is going to take care of the various classifiers that we want. So just over here, we are just initializing it. We're just initializing the various classifiers that we want, right? We're just initializing them. Okay, then after that is done, we divided our data. We actually called our function over here. Okay, then we divided our data into training and testing over here, right, using 20% for testing and then 80% for training. Okay, and then we fit our data, that is when the data length. Okay, and then we made some predictions. All right, then we printed the accuracy score, right, we print the accuracy over here. Okay, so that's basically what we did. So this part is done. Okay, this part is done. So let's do Control S or Command S and then save it, and then come here and see what we have. Okay, so it's going to run, and then let's see what we have. Or maybe we should change the data set. I think it's quite big, so it's giving us it's actually taking time to run. So let's just select some columns, right, because it's giving us flexibility to select our multiple columns. Okay, so let's just select some columns. So I'm going to select our target as the last. I remember that we said that the user should make sure, right, that they selected the target as the last column, right. So that's what I'm going to do, so that we'll be able to separate it in this form, right. So that's what I'm doing, making sure that the class, which is our target, should be the last column. Okay, so basically that is what we are seeing over here. Okay, so let's see the output over here. Okay, so now you see the output that we have, right. So we've been able to select some of the columns, right. So now we're using KNN, right. We're using KNN, so you can see we have name of classifier, right. That's what we did over here, right. So at the last part we said name of classifier, then we pass in the name of the classifier and then the accuracy, right. So that's basically what you can see, name of classifier. In this case is KNN. You can see the accuracy that we have, right, 99.8%. I mean, the range is quite huge. You can give them the flexibility to tune the seed and also change the K, right, the number of K, right. They can do that. They can do that as well. So they can tune that parameter as well. But if you give them a rigid code, it's going to be difficult for them to be changing those. But if you can give them that kind of flexibility, they can do it over here without interacting with the code at all. Okay, Okay, so now you see that the accuracy has changed. We have 99.9, right? At first it was 99.8, right? So you can give them that kind of flexibility. They can also choose among the various algorithms that they have, right? And then keep on playing with the hyperparameters as well, right? And then they can also go to different sessions. So now we are done with the EDA, we are done with the visualization, we are done with the model building, we are done. I mean, we are now going to build the about page. So that one is nothing. I mean, it's just I mean, you just write about the project that you're doing and whatever background information that you want them to see, right? Whatever background information that you want them to see. So just like we did over here, right? So dealing with here we wrote dealing with the model building, and then here we dealt with dealing with the visualization. Then we deal with dealing with the EDA part. So we're going to do the same thing over here, right? So I mean, the about page is just solely to you, whatever you want to do, right? So maybe here dealing with about us, right? So dealing with about us page. So maybe I mean you want to write a background about the project that you're doing, right? What the data set is about and your findings and whatever. I mean all the things that you want to write, all the conclusions that you want to write, you can write it at the about us page, right? So you can just write everything, or maybe instead of about us. So let me uncomment this, right? So instead of maybe about us, you can change it to maybe background, right? So maybe background information. You can just do that, right? You can just change it to instead of about us, you can just change it to say background, right? Background information, right? You can just do that, all right? So I mean, it's just I mean, solely up to you to whatever you want to do. So maybe inside here, I just want to write something, maybe st dot right. Right, and then inside there I want to write something, right? So this is maybe this is an interactive web page for our machine learning project, right? Feel free to use it, feel free to use it, right? So maybe something like this. I mean, this is not what you're supposed to write. I'm just writing any text there to show you that that is possible. And this is, I mean, where you write all the background. So, depending on what you want to write, you can just maybe do it this way, right? And then whatever you want to write, you write it inside there, right? You write whatever you want to write inside there, right? So you can just be writing it, or maybe use Markdown. That works better, right? You can use Markdown. Okay, you can use Markdown to do that. Okay, get rid of that. Okay, you can use Markdown to actually write that, and then whatever you want to write, you can just keep on writing it inside this, right? You can keep on writing it there. All right. So that's solely to you, whatever you want to write, whatever project that you're doing that you want to write over there, right? You can easily do it in there. Okay, I can do this since we are done. We can just blow some balloons there, right? So I can just do that. Maybe I didn't spell it. Let's see. Let's go there and then see what we have. If always run. Let's see if we don't have any errors in there. And then we go to about. Let's see. All right, so now you see the balloons are being blown. All right, so that's it. I mean, you just write. So at the about page, you see this is just the only thing that I write. But I mean, at this page is where you write all the background of the data sets, right? Everything that you need to write. So you can just be writing them, right? You can just be writing them over there. Right? You can just be writing whatever you want to write. So maybe this data set is loaded from, or maybe this data set is fetched, maybe something like that. It's fetched from the UCI machine learning repository, right? Maybe something like that, right? From machine learning repository, and then maybe just write maybe the analysis in here is to demonstrate how we can present our work to our stakeholders in an interactive way by building a web app for our machine learning algorithms using different data sets. So if you're going to use that, then you don't need to mention that you actually got the data from UCI machine learning repository, because you're using different. Okay, I mean that's fine. You can even mention that. Okay, so just Control S and then see the words that I wrote. You see that they are there, right? You see that they are there. So you just write a background of whatever that you're doing, right? You just write a background of that. Okay, so basically that is it. You don't need to do any fancy stuff over here. Just a background so that those who are going to use your app will get to understand it and then get to know what you're up to. Okay, so now you can now explore the various aspects. So you have the EDA part, right? So if you go to the EDA part, right, it's going to present you with the EDA part, right, where you can load the data set and then start performing some EDA. If you let me just load some data set over here, right? So you can load any data set that you want at all, right? You can just load any data set, then you start playing with it, right? You can also explore the visualization part, right? You can also explore the visualization part. You can explore the model part, right? So you have the flexibility to be moving around as you want, right? You have the flexibility to be moving around as you want. So basically this is what you're supposed to. This is how you're supposed to build your machine learning project. So after you do everything in the Jupyter Notebook, you can now move ahead with one more step, and then move on to building such kind of interactive app for your app, which your stakeholders can easily use. Okay, so we will end this class here, and in your next project I expect you to actually use something like this to make the presentation. Okay, so see you in the next video. Have a nice day.